As you may know already, my name is Melissa Parnagian. I am the coordinator for social impact, growth, and legislative affairs at the NHL, which is a long title, but basically means I work on projects that make hockey more socially conscious and culturally relevant. So, socially conscious being how do we use hockey as a platform to do good, whether that's through our Hockey Fights Cancer promotion to raise awareness for cancer research, our NHL Green initiatives to support environmentalism, or our recent We Skate for Black Lives campaign to support racial justice. Um, and then on the cultural relevance front, it's about how do we make more underrepresented groups feel welcome in the sport of hockey as players or as fans. So this includes kids of color, women and girls, people in the LGBTQ plus community, really making sure that we are inclusive and welcoming. These are broad goals, big goals, and day to day, that means the way you interact with them is different all the time. So some days I'm writing programming to bring new hockey programs and get kids playing in diverse areas and underprivileged areas around the country. Other times I'm writing scripts for videos about underrepresented hockey heroes like our Jackie Robinson, Willie O'Ree, who is still with us and is a lot of fun. And other days I'm writing, tweets or Instagram posts with resources for fans to register to vote or how they can get involved in their community. So it's all over the place. And I love that about the job because I didn't come from a sports professional background. I was a sports fan and still am a huge sports fan, but my background is actually in politics. My undergraduate degree at Princeton and my graduate degree at Harvard are both in public policy. And I had fully intended to go off into the political campaign world. But I started to consider that as important as politics is, and it's very important, so please vote, as important as it is, sports can reach people in a way that politics can't, just by nature of how you can almost subliminally reach people without realizing that you're guiding them on a path towards positive change. And so to recognize the power that sports has to bring people together, while I was in grad school, I did two things that really enabled me to pivot into the sports industry. The first was in my grad program, you had one summer in which you can do an internship. So I wanted to spend that summer in a meaningful way in the sports industry. And I looked up places that would allow me to really navigate this sports politics space. And I wanted to spend some time at the Players Tribune, which is a sports journalism publication that helps athletes talk about social and political issues. So I went to the career office at Harvard and I said, how can we get in touch with them? Because they didn't have like a advertised internship program. And I think what was really key there is I didn't say I want to work in sports or I want to work in basketball. I said, how can I work at this particular organization? And because I had done the research and identified one place, it was easy to back end a connection to them. Like Harvard did not have a connection to the Players Tribune, but we ended up finding one through like a counselor's cousin's sister-in-law. It was a crazy connection, but again, when you're very specific in what you're aiming toward, you can kind of strategize in that way. So I spent a summer at the Players Tribune, loved it, learned a lot about what athletes had already stepped forward as voices on social change, the challenges they had encountered, and strategies to help fans really follow the athletes as they lead more with their platforms. Then I went back to Harvard for my second year and did the thing that more directly led to my NHL job, which was I held a panel on sports and racial justice, which is something that's important to me as a Black woman and also just was very timely, right? So I was in grad school in between 2017 and 2019. So all the Kaepernick drama is going on. And in the process of making a panel and moderating the panel as well, in my case, you're reaching out to a bunch of folks in the sports world who get to see what you're interested in. And then if they join the panel, kind of get to see you in action. so you have a chance to make a meaningful impression on those folks. So would highly recommend trying to organize, panels on things you care about, similar to this one, I guess. And what ended up happening at my panel, I got participation from an NFL player, a former NBA player, a prominent sports journalist, and a former NHL executive. And it's that executive who called me about 18 months later and told me that an opportunity had opened up at the NHL, which I wasn't necessarily thinking about, right? Like I was going off in that political path. But he remembered me. And it's not that I had kept in touch that much, right? Like I'd maybe connected with him 3 times since the panel. But again, you have a chance to make a meaningful impression when people see you doing things you care about, which sort of stays in their mind a bit more than a LinkedIn request or a networking night. And was lucky enough to join the league and have been here for a little over a year now. So I will wrap up with 2 observations I have just from being a part of the NHL. One is there are people in the sports industry who will sometimes assume that the community relations and social impact part of sports is extra to the business, that it's something nice to do, but it's not integral to how the business is run. Those people are wrong because when your brand, any brand, is going out in the community and helping others and doing positive things, you're making positive, lasting relationships with the people you're helping. And those people, by way of that relationship, can become fans, which affects your business. So it's a very important component of the sports industry. And the second thing I would say is there are people outside the sports industry who sometimes think that working in sports itself is not very meaningful because it's just a bunch of fun and it's, where's the sort of significance of being part of it? And those folks are also wrong because yes, working in sports is fun. You get to go to events, you get to meet athletes. I've loved it. But also by way of the amount of people you can reach, millions of people in every broadcast, millions of people on social media, every aspect of what you do in the sports industry can have a huge impact, whether you're doing accounting or whether you're doing, player relations. Like your impact is huge. So a job can be both fun and impactful. And I find that sports is that for me. And maybe it will also be that for some of you. So that's a little bit about my journey, and I will turn it back over to you, Victor.
Well, that was awesome. That was a lot of good information in a small amount of time. It usually takes me about an hour to get some good things out.
Add a little golf clap there for you, Melissa. That was great.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
How do we follow that?
Yeah. Yeah. Raven, you can go next.
Hey, no. It's kind of, I don't know. I could go next because a lot of my points I feel like kind of connect with Melissa on that community relations side. That's where I'm at. So if you would like me to, I'm totally fine. But I think you should go.
I'll go. It's all good. I appreciate that, Melissa, because I come from the sales side, and I think I would agree with everything you said. And it's a very integral, important piece of the business. And I just thoroughly enjoyed, even as a panelist, hearing that, just because you're in it even on the team side or the agency side, but you don't always maybe get that perspective. So I love that. And Victor and Delaney and the rest of you, thank you for having us on. Just like Melissa said, my name's Clay Cardenas. I'm a premium account executive with Legends, and specifically the Columbus Crew Project. So for those of you who may not know what Legends is, or a holistic agency that deliver results for clients, whether it's sales, it's corporate sponsorships, hospitality, food and beverage. They're mostly known for their owned by Jerry Jones. So they're based out of the Star in Dallas. They just wrapped up with the Las Vegas Raiders Allegiant Stadium project. They're currently on the SoFi Stadium with the Rams and Los Angeles Chargers. So a lot of different hospitality, food and beverage, corporate sponsorships. Like I said, they're with University of Wisconsin. So they're in the collegiate space. They're in the Major League Sports, as well as they're also international as well. So My role specifically, and I'll start with how I got here and then kind of dive in. I'll take maybe a little bit of a different approach. So I went to Louisiana State University down in Baton Rouge. Sports, I think, just like all the panelists here, have always been a part of my life. Knew that I wanted to do something with sports when I graduated, but was never sure what. Sophomore year of college, I got an internship with Ohio State. I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio, and it was with IMG, and it was literally called the Ohio State Fan Van. We traveled all around Ohio. It could have been 3 hours away, it could have been 15 minutes away, but it was essentially you could go on a site and rent the fan van, and we brought a pop-up shop, we brought a big blow-up. It was kind of a pop-up shop, but even a magnum size. And then it was anywhere from handouts, giveaways. It was really just promoting Ohio State, right? And at the end of the day, we had iPads and people would sign up, give their information, and that fed back to sales teams or fed back to marketing teams, and then we had their information and it'd go out. But it was an internship type of work, and I think getting that was, and I'm sure your professors have said the same thing, is they said, the most important thing that you're going to get is your hands-on experience, and that's how you'll find your path of what you want to do. So it may be, even if you have in mind what you maybe want to do graduating, still kind of put your hands in a whole bunch of different things. So that was a great experience just to kind of learn. And I learned off the bat, maybe experiential marketing wasn't for me, right? Maybe that type of work, but I loved getting my hands into it. And going into senior year of college, we had to do a practicum, and I was fortunate to land with the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever, which is their WNBA affiliate. And I was doing game operations. So it was literally for the Fever games on game day, it was telling the dancers where to go. We were going on the court with the mascot and shooting out the T-shirts that come out of that large kind of like T-shirt jumbotron shooter, whatever you want to call it. We were in the mics of telling the halftime performance, where to go. So it was cool because there's a different perspective on game operations and kind of how the day-to-day and how an actual game time works. And then on the side with the Pacers, it was the same type of thing with Ohio State. They called it the Pacer Fan Van. We were traveling all around Indiana, and we handed out free giveaways. We had iPads. We were collecting data information. It came back to the sales team, the marketing team, what have you. So that was on an internship basis too, of where we were in the office really of 3 to 4 days a week, and then whenever we had game days for the Fever. So again, a crucial kind of just, I learned what I liked and didn't like, but it was great to have that type of experience. And going into senior year at LSU, I ended up interning with the athletic department, specifically with the football team as well as the basketball team. And it was doing anything from, executing promotions for on game days of a football game or on a basketball game day. We would be same type of deal with the game operations. We had Odell Beckham come for a halftime performance. We had to escort him down. We were literally walking the band through and going, kind of taking them on their route as they marched through the parade grounds, as we called it. That was kind of our campus hub. From there was, I assisted in developing marketing plans for the men's and women's tennis team. Also developed kind of activation and ad campaigns and marketing plans on how we could increase group ticket sales, how we can garner more fans, get more attraction. So it was just getting, again, a lot of hands in different buckets. So I think that would be biggest piece of advice too, is I'm not sure of the range of kind of, freshmen to seniors on here, but I would say get your hands in as many things as you can, right? Of whether you love it or hate it, it's at least an experience, and you'll learn very quickly if you, if that's something maybe you want to gravitate towards or not. And that's when I was graduating. I reached out, I started doing networking. I graduated in August of 2017, and started just doing heavy networking on LinkedIn, maybe connections I knew. It might have been a friend of a friend of a friend who I knew was in the sports industry, but I just connected with them and said, hey, like, I'm graduating, just trying to get in the industry, like, what's your biggest piece of advice? It didn't matter if they were in community relations, human resources, sales, marketing, just really picking their brain on seeing what they loved about their job or how they got there. And it would just kind of get your brain flowing and gave me some insight. So it was funny. It was my mom's roommate from college's husband who was in the sports industry. And I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm just looking to get my foot in the door. I'm graduating. I'm not sure what I want to do. I've spoken to some people and they say I'm a little late in the game, but what's your biggest piece of advice? And he said, well, he had come through sales and he had started in minor league baseball and he worked his way up. He started in concessions and worked his way into group sales and into ticket sales and corporate sponsorships. And he climbed the ladder and he said, so my biggest piece of advice is, start in sales and you'll learn very quickly just from the internships you've done. You'll either love it or you'll hate it, but it's a good step in the door. It's a good foot in the door. And once you've done inside sales, as those are typically 9 to 12 month programs, he said, you can move on from there. And at least then you'll have that connection. If you wanted to, I always knew I wanted to go to the marketing partnerships or corporate sponsorship side. So he said that's a great avenue. So I literally got on Teamwork Online and applied for probably 60 different inside sales jobs. And I was fortunate to hear back from about 5 and landed a job with the Phoenix Suns. So for inside sales, it's a very grueling, position. You really are, again, like I said, it's 9 to 12 months of, 100 phone calls a day. We were to set 10 appointments with consumers, businesses. It was just as I was out in those fan vans gaining people's, contact information, that I very quickly learned that's who we were calling and that's who we're, going out and getting to bring on for either full season, half season packages at the Suns. Might have been groups who were 10 or more. So it was basically an internship, but you are being paid as if you're full time. I'm sure Eric will have a lot more that he can, I won't try and spoil anything for him, but sure, he has a great perspective on it, being a manager of it now. So from inside sales, I was promoted to group sales, where that's a lot of putting butts in seats, right? It's 10 or more seats, but you're selling the fan experience. You're contacting dance groups, right? Cheerleading groups, saying, hey, you want to come perform the halftime show? You want to come perform the pregame show? Choir groups, you want to come anthem. And at the same time, you're selling that fan experience, but you're also putting, like I said, the butts in seats, as our job is to fill the stadium, right? Just as in ticket sales, that is your job, right? That's where the main core of, or I guess, the revenue is coming from, besides all of your other avenues. But I very quickly learned that, from inside sales, I was more successful at the transactional sale of going out to businesses. And, in B2B sales, you're selling a solution. You're selling of these companies have their different goals of how they're trying to win their own business, right? And that's what I loved. You learn how a plumbing business works. You learn how a law firm works. You learn how a marketing service works. And then you're selling your products. We're selling the Suns as a product for these companies to grow and build. So I decided to leave the Suns and kind of see what was going to be next. And fortunately, that brought me back to Columbus as premium sales and work on the project and agency side, where now initially we were transitioning current season ticket members from the old stadium into now what will be the new stadium in downtown Columbus. But it's dealing with a lot of businesses and educating them on the new stadium on the business side and, what Columbus and what the soccer team is building and how it's growing. So that's a lot of, in a nutshell, it's kind of a higher level surface view at what I do now. And I would just say the biggest piece of advice is 2 things is get your hands in as many opportunities as you can. Maybe it may not be the most glorious thing. It may not be at the end of the day in 10 years what you want to be doing, but it'll give you that experience and you'll quickly find out, as I previously said, whether you love it, whether you hate it, or whether it's something that maybe you want to give a shot. And the second thing I would say is, as you're going throughout the process, just as much as a hiring manager is interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. I would say, they're the ones who are going to be developing you, helping you grow your career. If you do, in my instance personally, if it wasn't sales, right? We were a class of inside sales of 20, about probably 8 of those went on to community relations. They went on to human resources. They went on to marketing. But that's where it was in the trust of the inside sales manager and who their leader was to tell them and make sure that they were getting where they wanted to go. So I'll just say, make sure you're interviewing them at the same time. That do they have your best interest at heart? Do they know, are they going to take care of you? Are they going to be there, right? And maybe it's a bad day and they're not just going to say tough luck, right? So I would just say those are the 2 biggest things that coming out of where I am today, I'd say. So I'll kick it back to you, Victor.
Awesome. That was awesome, Clay. And I was lucky enough to talk to you before this panel, so I was able to have some of that information at my disposal. But thanks for sharing, and we'll kick it with Raven here now.
Oh boy, here we go. I'm with the Eric, just got to delete out what I say in case it's anything crazy. But I'm Raven Payne. I'm with the Cleveland Monsters, so I'm with the AHL. I'm here in Cleveland. One, I want to say thank you to Victor, Delaney, everybody else that's on this call, Cole, just for having all 4 of us here, really echoing what Clay and Melissa already said. But it's just been really interesting to how I got here. For the longest time, I thought I was going to be an educator, going to be a teacher somewhere. Growing up, even starting off in college, I started off as an education major. But growing up in Cleveland, people always look at me now like, hockey? That's what you're in? I'm like, wait, I played softball, I played everything else. Hockey was not the thing in Cleveland. I lived in the city of Cleveland. It wasn't the go-to easy thing to pick up. And so it's always a fun thing to talk to people about that. Just how I got to that point. And so with going to college, I went to Bowling Green State University here in Ohio. So I didn't go too far from home and started off as an education major. I did 2 years. My parents thought I was crazy when I was like, I want to change to be a sport management major. I joined the SMA, ours was called the Sport Management Alliance, and really just started to start the grind there. I got into everything. I was the manager with the softball team there. I was working with the fundraising division. I was interning at the high school down the road, really just trying to figure out. There were so many careers in sport management. Like, what do you want to do? Kind of touching what Clay said. You really just want to dibble and dabble in everything. When you have this opportunity to do it, just because you don't know exactly what you want to do, and there's so many pathways that you can take. You can be in sales, but you can be in group sales. You can be in business sales. You can be in, there's so many broad things, just always knowing. So I really just honed in on that and was like, okay, I'm going to do all these things. Yes, I stressed myself out. But at the end of the day, I had fun doing all of them. It just really needed to focus on one once I got out of school. So then that summer, my last semester, I did it in the summer. I was like, I really want to go back to Cleveland. I want to give back to Cleveland. I want to do something in Cleveland, but I wanted to be in sports. So I just did some research. I found out I knew somebody in the Cleveland School District, which is the 2nd largest public school district, second to Columbus, in Ohio, and was like, okay, they have a sport management commissioner. That sounds crazy. That's huge. And so I was like, hey, I actually know her. I can work up under her. So we put together programs for coaches. We put together programs for students, and just really seeing the impact that they had. And we worked with a place called Positive Coaching Alliance. And so I really built a relationship with the contact there named Ryan Virtue. And so this is really where just that network and those simple conversations. And he always tested me. He always asked me, what's your why? Why are you doing this, Raven? What's the purpose of you doing this? And that's something that I still continue to ask myself now, even when I'm working this on a day-to-day. I know what I'm doing, but really, what's your why? And then, of course, at the end of the day, what's your organizational's why? But just knowing what you want to do and the reason you're doing it. Don't just do it just because, oh, it seems cool, it sounds cool. Really, what's the reason behind you doing it? And you'll do it much better, honestly. And so moving on from there, I applied for, I can't even tell you how many jobs at that point, but I ended up getting a position with the Cleveland Monsters. Honestly, sorry, Clay and Eric, I was trying to avoid ticket sales as much as possible. Yes, I love people. I love talking to people. I love trying to sell you your sock off your foot. But I knew ticket sales wasn't particularly where I wanted, but I actually ended up working on the ticket sales side, but more so on the client relations, member events, and things like that. So that was funner. I got to meet people, talk to people all the time, understand why they became a season ticket holder, understand just what they look for, the value actually coming to a game. It's not always just the game. I found out it was the environment, the game presentation. Oh, we love going to Community Corner and buying jerseys. I love coming here to spend money. That's what you love to do. All right. I like you. I'm gonna call you later. And so it was just always nice just to like in that role. I didn't have to particularly sell tickets all the time, but I didn't. So I really got to learn a lot in that position. And so it kind of touches back to Clay as well. So in that, I was in a seasonal role more so. And after talking to my boss and talking to other people and just generally, literally, I'll talk to anybody, like the president, CEO. I didn't care who you were, but I was going to get in front of you and get to know you and one, how you got there. Because most people I talk to, they started in some smaller role and worked their way up just by talking to people, them understanding what they wanted to do in their life and understanding their why. And so me and my boss, we talked about it a lot. And she knew I wanted to go in community relations. She knew that was the direction I wanted to take. When the position, before the position opened up, she was like, hey, Raven, you should talk to this person. This position may be opening up soon. Go for it. Like it fits you 100%. And so the only reason she knew that is because I explained it to her multiple times. We had those conversations. I had those conversations with other people. And so they all knew like this was for Raven. This was perfect. And so now I'm in the community relations specialist role with the Monsters. And so we work with a lot of different things in Cleveland, but a lot of our focus is youth hockey. And it's not just youth hockey, it's growing the game. So growing it between young kids, adults. We even have focuses currently is on our girls clinics and then our just diversity in general. Because we live in the city of Cleveland. There is one free local rink, and that is it in the city of Cleveland. It's about 23,000 acres. There's one rink. And so we take that focus very strongly into taking our sales out into those communities to even allow them the opportunity to understand what hockey is. Like, oh, we need a stick and a puck and this. So that's one of our larger focuses. Yes, right now we have a big focus in racial diversity and things like that. And it's amazing to see that like even my coworkers care so passionately about that. And it's not just me fighting for me. It's everybody else fighting for me, which is really nice. And so just my job in general right now is kind of all over the place, but we try to hone down on these focuses and really see where we can give a big impact to the community around us. Community relations, obviously, it kind of speaks for itself a lot of times. We really try to build that relationship with the community that's surrounding us. If it's from nonprofits, if it's from just community, understanding where our corporate partners want to connect with the community. And so it's just a lot of things that we work on. We are a smaller team, smaller staff. So I kind of dibble and dabble in other areas as well. So like I do have to work, I work with group sales sometimes. It's like, okay, 50-50 raffle is sold tonight by this partner, but how can we amplify this and tell their story as well? And not just make it about, oh, let's sell tickets. Let's tell this organization story to get that out. Because right now, honestly, that's what a lot of community partners are looking for. They're looking for not just the money, they're looking for the recognition and the advertisement and just to get people to draw in closer to them because they are doing amazing things right now. So just really honing in on that. And so just honestly, the biggest thing, I think I'm kind of copying off of Clay at this point. It's really just while you're in college, do as much as you can. Like this is probably the most freedom you have to dibble and dabble into different parts of the business. And I think I told Victor this as well. It's just super important to do it now. Sports is a super time consuming as far as game nights versus right now have no games on the schedule as of now, but it's still a rigorous, you're still planning, you're still just a lot of things are happening and it continues to evolve. So it's a huge sacrifice, but I love it. We have a lot of parents on staff as well, and they still continue to do it. So, but I'll say if you could do it now, try it out now. From anything sales, you can join Clay and Eric, or if you want to go for the racial diversity and community relations and the anything IT. It's so many things you can do a lot in sports. But yeah, that's me. Eric and his.
I feel like there's no clapping now because we're all virtual, so I feel like that was great, Raven. Thanks for sharing. My turn, right, Victor? Thank you. Thanks again for having all of us. And if my Wi-Fi kind of gets shaky, Victor, I'll look to you. Just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. It's been weird today. But, I wasn't thinking of this, but Raven and Clay, you guys talked about, getting your hands in a lot of things, getting a lot of experience early on. And that's definitely, I would 100% back that up. I think the thing that I was at a career fair. It was the Jacksonville. It was a Teamwork Online career fair, at our local Jacksonville Iceman hockey game. And, you have like 300 seniors come in, and they get to have a quick like elevator pitch with the PGA Tour, or the NFL was in town, and everything. And I would say almost like 80% of the kids that I talked to, I was like, so where do you see yourself going into sports? To do anything. I want to do anything. And I was like, that's great, but unfortunately we're not hiring for anything. So go in and do your research on where you want to go, and then see like, okay, let me reach out to some people on LinkedIn, see if this fits my personality a little bit more. And then when you're ready to go in, when you're ready to go for those interviews or meet with decision makers, then you can be like, well, at first I just had an idea of I can do anything. But as I talked to Melissa and Raven in community relations with the NHL, I found that fits my personality best. So that's where I'm going into. That's a better sales pitch. And I felt so bad. All of the kids would be like, I'm willing to do anything. And I wrote a LinkedIn post afterwards. I was like, unfortunately, we're not hiring for just anything. Every job description is specific. So definitely do that, but do your research, especially use LinkedIn, like Victor did to set up this for me to get on here. So I'm very appreciative. But real quick, I want to make sure we have time for questions after this, but I would just go through my story and then what we do here at the tour with our inside sales program. But I'm originally from Brazil, born and raised there. And then I moved to the States when I was around 10 years old, lived mainly in West Palm Beach, Florida, attended University of Central Florida, graduated back in 2009. And then my first sales job was with Major League Soccer. They were doing a national sales center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was 45 days of intense sales training. There were 10 of us in these dorm rooms in Blaine, Minnesota. And we were they had a sports complex there, and they just taught us everything you could learn about sales in 45 days. It's that easy, right, Clay? It's 45 days and you're done. And then at the end, you interview with MLS teams, and you're selling real inventory for different MLS teams. And then at the end, you interview, and then they ship you off to a team. So that was all great. That's how I got started. That was 2010. I took a break from sports, moved back to Brazil a little while, ended up moving back to the States, met my wife. And 2014, my wife and I moved down to Jacksonville. And I was like, okay, great. They have the Jaguars there. Not the best franchise on the field, but off the field, they were doing some incredible things. I can say that now because I don't work there anymore. But off the field, they had a really cool owner. They were building pools in the stadium and the world's largest video boards and doing all this stuff. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I emailed everybody on the sales staff, basically just asking for an interview. And I still have that email because I think I said at one point, I will work unpaid as an unpaid intern, or even clean the toilets was one of my sentences. I'm like, why would I write that? But it worked, and it got me an interview. And then I started in inside sales with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2014. And it's a lot like what Clay mentioned with his experience at the Suns, where they hire 10 or 20 kids straight out of college usually, and you're making 100 calls a day, you're grinding it out, and then they'll keep the top two. That's what they did with me at the Jags, the top two revenue producers. And I was lucky enough to be one of those two, and then just kept working my way up. But what I found super valuable, and I'm so glad I did this, I kept a journal from day one of when I started in inside sales. Like my first day making a cold call, I still have that, what I felt, what I was thinking, and I have that in writing. Like the first 6 months, I think I wrote every day in that journal. And it's so helpful for me now being an inside sales manager, because I can remember how it felt to be in the shoes of the kids that I'm managing now. And I'm really grateful that I did that. But since I started there with the Jags, I kind of knew I wanted to be in the management route. I kept seeing things that I was like, why are we doing it this way? Why can't we do it this way? And the worst answer you can get is, well, that's the way we've always done it. I was like, I hate that answer. That's why there's no progress. So I had to learn to be a little bit patient and take my time a little bit and focus on my job first. And if none of my ideas would ever get implemented if I was not doing my job now well. So I was like, okay, I need to crush it. I'm going to crush it sales. I'm going to be the best I can. And then over time, they'll see that I'm a great worker. And then maybe somebody will listen to my ideas. So that was my whole mindset since I started at the Jaguars. And then 2019, July is, so I've been at the tour for 13 months now as an inside sales manager. Very different going from you're selling 100% of the time, like you're physically calling people, selling them, to now you're managing a team. Completely different, because now I'm more of a sales trainer. I have to, make sure everybody's schedules are correct, and totally different, but I love it. I think it's where I'm meant to be for sure. And we're a little bit different from, the sports teams and their inside sales. So our group, the PGA Tour, kind of runs 42 different tournaments around the country, all over the country. And so our kids come into inside sales, and our job is to promote every single one of them to one of those tournaments. I think since 2019, we've promoted 14 out of 17 reps that have come through the program to tournaments. So that's been really exciting. So it's a little bit different from my Jaguars days, where they just focus on the top 2 revenue producers, and then the others, they'll help you find a job elsewhere. We're trying to keep everybody within the PGA Tour umbrella. And we focus mainly on like B2B sales. So we don't do a lot of calling, individuals like, hey, you came out to the Players Championship last year. Do you want to come out again? We call mainly businesses and try to have a conversation about different hospitality packages or branding, marketing, all these kinds of things. And it's really cool, and I enjoy it. And it's been a really good 13 months here. And Raven, you talked about, somebody telling you about your why, and that being so important. And if you guys haven't watched it, the Start With Why TED Talk from Simon Sinek, and all his books are fantastic. But we have our reps watch the Start With Why TED Talk, their day one of inside sales. And then I have them write their personal why, not why we're selling tickets to golf, but why did you just take a job that pays you almost nothing, come all the way down to the PGA Tour headquarters? Why did you do that, right? And some people are motivated differently. Some people are, hey, I don't want to let my family down, or I'm the first one to graduate from college, I got to make my family proud, or I come from a family full of successful people, I can't let them down, or whatever it is. Some people are money related. So you have to understand your why. And then whenever things get tough, because things are going to get tough no matter what job you go into, you revert back to that why, and you're like, okay, that's why I'm here. I know that there's a much bigger picture. Today may suck, but there's a much bigger picture here, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So definitely recommend you guys watch that and write your own personal whys if you haven't done that. But yeah, that's me.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so I feel like that's like a question that I always tell myself, like, why am I here? I actually had another call today with a person, different kind of thing, but with U.S. Integrity, and the guy kept asking me, like, why do you want to do this? And I was like, I don't know, because I was so overwhelmed. I'm like, usually I know the answer, and if I don't, then it's, it puts me in that kind of like what am I supposed to do? So I'll definitely have to watch that for sure. That being said, I think we'll probably start with Delaney's question first, Cole's, and then I'll finish up with my question, and then we'll have questions from the audience after that.
Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to thank everybody. You guys all did really good and offered us some really valuable information, so thank you. My question is, I'm sure you get the question a lot of what advice would you give graduates? It's pretty standard, but during this COVID, I guess, do we want to call it the COVID era? I don't really know. During the COVID times, what advice would you guys give graduates that may not be able to get the experience that we've kind of discussed here today? Like, what would you guys tell them?
Stay in school. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I think looking into graduate programs, I think at this time would be a smart move. and just continue your education. I think one of the questions that I'm going to ask a lot of, like, we're in a hiring freeze right now, but hopefully we turn a corner soon. But one question I'm going to ask is, okay, you graduated in May. It's now December. What have you done with your time? Right? Well, I got really good at Call of Duty or whatever. I just played video games all day. Well, that's not great, right? But if you talk about, well, I was I reached out to a lot of people on LinkedIn. I'm really curious about sales, so I started following all the sales trainers on LinkedIn, like Lance Tyson and Bob Hamer and all those guys. I learned a lot. Like, those are the people that are going to make an impact for me. So the learning never stops. So so my advice would be just continue learning. I don't know, if you have the opportunity to stay in school and go to a graduate program, that's something I wish I would have done. I don't think I have the grades or the brain to go to Harvard or anything like that, but that would be, and I don't know, that's just my personal opinion.
I would have to agree with you, Eric. I know even for my job, we're doing just a lot of professional developments. Like, a lot of them are free right now. It's amazing. Like, CEOs are just talking to tell you about what's going on in the communities, what's going on, how can you stay engaged in your community. So I would say, if you have a destination that you would like to be in, or a hometown or something, learn more about what's happening in that city right now. If you are looking at particular teams that you want to be a part of, if you want to go hockey, baseball, basketball, whatever it is, like, start seeing if they're having any of those professional developments. Like, we have Time to Talks happening at ours a lot, and just a lot of engagement is happening, and a lot of things are free. So I would take advantage as much as possible as a lot of those professional developments, because we're the same boat, hiring freezes and things like that. Take advantage of those.
There's a hiring freeze at the league office too at the moment. So I agree 100% on taking advantage of the many panels that are out there of people just talking about whatever industry, whatever part of the sports industry you want to go into, because you pick up on a lot of the intangibles that way. What they focus on, what they don't focus on, kind of lets you figure out how hockey, for example, might have different concerns than baseball or basketball or what have you. And I would also say, while you are still on campus, think about, what you and this group could do as a project. Like, if you were to find a way to come up with something that, was about engaging sports fans in a virtual format, or making people feel connected in the absence of sports, but tied to the sports industry, you could then kind of present that as proof of your engagement or proof of concept or interest, and say, look what I did, in this new changing world. And people will appreciate that innovation.
Yeah, I just kind of piggyback off all three of, Melissa, Eric, and Raven. As much as it's COVID, we're at work from home through, call it March right now. Some of these executives who wouldn't have the time to maybe network or connect or talk might have the time to jump on the phone, right? Shoot them an email, find them on their website, right, of whatever maybe industry, or not industry, but whatever department segment they're in, and shoot a message, right? They may be working from home as well, and see if they'll connect, right, and pick their brain. And then just to Eric's point of, right, some of these sales trainers of like an Lance Tyson, Travis Apple, or Deanna Witter, right, they all have podcasts, and it's not specifically sales related. It's, right, they have CROs, they have community relations, they have VP of human resources, and they speak about, how'd you get in the industry? How'd you, write, what did it take? What experience did you have? What did you set as a goal? So something like Eric spoke. So I'd really take advantage of those just while it is COVID, right? And there's the time to pick up on some of these things, so.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Hi, everybody. Once again, thank you for coming out. My name is Cole Graffin. I am a senior here, and I am the social media coordinator on the board. I wanted to ask a question to Eric and Clay specifically. I've actually got two questions. The second one's kind of like a fun question for you guys based on your past experiences. But Eric and Clay, I was wondering how COVID has changed the way that you guys use technology in sales. And because I know that a lot of us here for SMA are looking to do the Milwaukee Way Sales Academy, that Delaney was talking about before. So I'm just looking for maybe a hint or a tip that we could use online.
Eric, you wanna go first, and I'll.
Sure. Yeah, so COVID has definitely changed some things. We used to invite prospects down to the TPC clubhouse to have lunch or breakfast, and now people are like, I don't want to be anywhere near you. No, I don't want to do. So now we're doing a lot more Zoom calls but it's worked out actually better. We've been able to connect with more people and schedule more meetings this way. Gosh, I'm kind of struggling to think of any tips on a virtual. I think just practice is great, right? So, and we do that with our reps. We'll do mock virtual meetings, and because sometimes you have to share a screen. Do you know exactly what happens when you hit that little button with the arrow on it? Like there's different, if you have different screens or different things on you don't want to, show them your personal emails. So you want to be very fluid with it, control the conversation. So we run through a lot of role plays, and that's been super helpful. And it's almost like you have to be even more engaged because you don't feel the energy of the room, right? I'm in one of our bedrooms here. Like there's not the energy of being in front of you guys, but you still have to have that same kind of energy and bring yourself up a little bit. Don't let yourself come down to the environment. That would be kind of my tip.
Yeah, it's, I mean, very similar to like what Eric was saying. We've just completely gone to Zoom, and it's almost worked to our benefit though. If we've ran a ton more meetings than maybe we're going to be able to, because we were all in-person meetings, right? We had an experience center in downtown Columbus that we were inviting executives to. We would set appointments there and give them a taste of what the new stadium was going to look like. And thankfully we transitioned to a Channel One app, which gives a virtual presentation of the new stadium, and we're able to pitch and kind of go through it with them and talk with them. And so I would say virtually has helped us and garnered more meetings and sales. It's actually propelled us in the project life further than we would have thought. And that's where now we're even transitioning to, we may just do the whole project virtually, right? It raises the question of can we run more meetings than we maybe would have in person? We have this application, right, that does the same job. Sure, it's not physically, but the results are there. Can we continue to drive those? So I'd say just that's how it's changed our business. And I think though to maybe a tip I would echo everything Eric said. Maybe record yourself, right, on your Zoom, record yourself maybe practicing whatever they have you running through or whatever they have you doing maybe after the first day or whatever it looks like. But I would say it is key, right, of making sure you're just prepared. And are you on your phone, right? It's easier to tell if someone's engaged, right? Are you looking down because someone just shot you a text? Did you get a notification on Instagram, right? We all do it, right? I did it probably 3 times during the thing, right? So it's easy, and we all fall victim of it. It's kind of natural habit. So maybe just put it away, right? And just make sure you're engaged and make sure you're present and you're noticing, right? And so I would echo everything Eric said and just add on those points.
I'll throw this in there. Something we've been fortunate to do a lot of things with our ticket sales team, I should say, is really just try to lead gen as many things as possible. So if it's something that we did an auction, we know those people are wanting things from the Cleveland Monsters. So these are the people that you should be reaching out to. So we've done a lot of that. Played little games, and like you'll put in like your phone number and a name, and it's just a way. So we were able to really connect with people that were looking for things from the Monsters still, even though we had no games really to offer you or nothing physically in person. But a lot of our sales team, I've witnessed them doing it. They had calls between each other. They just kind of role played it together. And they gave one had a scenario that they were going against what they were telling them and asked all these crazy questions and things like that. And so they put that in there because we are in an unprecedented time. So you were going to get a lot of questions thrown at you or things that you weren't even able to answer. So I was in the office. We're in a 1 day a week type schedule. So we still have some ticket sales people sitting behind me. So I'll hear them doing those type things. And I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty funny to hear. But like they say it like really helps. So that's just for your future, thinking about that as well. Like, pull a partner, pull a Victor and be like, hey, we're going to role play this. You're the prospect. I'm the rep selling to you. help out your friends.
Thank you guys so much. That was great advice. I'm actually, if you see me looking down, writing down a bunch of notes. But so my second question was, do you guys have any tips for somebody that might end up leaving their home state? I know that I would prefer to stay in the Midwest. I would love to work for the Bucks or the Packers or the Brewers or something like that. But I know that somebody like Delaney wants to leave Wisconsin as fast as humanly possible and wants to go to Florida. So I just thought, do you guys have any potential tips, like maybe stuff that you did once you got state or like places that you went?
I'll just say dive right in. If it's you're just graduated, it's time that you don't get back. I would just say embrace it, right? If that's great if you can stay, but if I was looking to stay. Fortunately, I was able to come back close to home, but moving from Ohio to Arizona was, across the country. And luckily in sales, there was 15 other kids who we all just graduated college, and there was 2 from Arizona, but everyone was from, the East Coast to the West Coast to in the middle to Florida to, Wyoming. So we had everybody from everywhere. And I would say just the big thing too is just embrace it. And it's going to be uncomfortable with uncomfortable. And, that's what we're told every day. And you just got to, I don't know, you're young, right? You can always come back when you're older, but you might as well just kind of get maybe a different feel for a different city, and you can always come back, right? And maybe whatever path you go down, it will bring you back. But it's what my piece of advice would be.
I'm a little biased because I knew I wanted to come back home. So I live in New Jersey. I'm about an hour out from New York City by train. My parents are from the city. And so although I was doing grad school up in Cambridge or Boston, and there were opportunities there that I could have pursued, I knew I wanted to come back to Jersey/New York and kind of stay in that area. And so I'm lucky in that most of the major sports leagues have offices in New Jersey and New York. But I also think there's something powerful in just knowing with clarity sort of where you want to go before you start applying, like kind of setting out how far, how long are you willing your commute to be? How long are you willing to live away from home if you are living away from home? I just think in my experience, like setting those parameters for myself and seeing how some of my friends have set it for them has helped them avoid making decisions that long term they wouldn't maybe have enjoyed as much, because there's something about your first job offer in the field that you're interested in where you're like, oh boy, yes, like I'm just going to go grab that. But if your commute is 2 hours, or if you're going to be halfway across the country from your parents and you're really close with your parents, it just sort of all depends on your experiences. So just kind of go through those and honor those however you relate.
And it's 75 degrees here this weekend and sunny. So Jacksonville, Florida. It's very nice.
If you can't tell by my turtleneck, it's a little chilly here. I think we just had snow this weekend. So
yeah, I'll just throw that in there.
It's roughly 42 degrees here. Eric, it's all on you now. I didn't go anywhere. I went to college 2 hours away, and I came back home to Cleveland and actually was fortunate to have a job here. I have a lot of coworkers that have 2 from New York, 1 from Portland. So I have a lot of people around me that have traveled to come here. A lot of our sales team are not originally from Cleveland at all. There might be about 2. We have some that came from Florida for some reason. They wanted to join us in the snow. But yeah, so I fortunately only went 2 hours away from college and then came back home, got a job here. So it's not very common that it always just works out that way. But I was very fortunate. But I will go anywhere. I can tell you that. Like if California, no, not the California right now. Maybe Arizona, if they offer a job, sure. But personally, I have not been too far away from home.
Yeah, I think it's all personal preference, like family and things like that play a factor. But I will tell you, like a lot of people that go into sales, they'll join an inside sales group, and those people that go through inside sales are like they're at your wedding. You are friends with them for life. Like that's a really big bond. I'm sure Clay can can speak to that too. But like I still talk to one of the guys that I did Major League Soccer with up in Blaine, Minnesota. He's now director of global partnerships at Topgolf. So we still keep in touch, and all of the kids from Inside Sales, we're still in a group text and just laugh about the Jags when they lose every weekend now. But but the relationships you make, man, when you're all on that same boat and kind of like, oh, who are, like, that's a bond that stays for a long time. So that's super cool too.
Thank you guys so much. And Victor, if you want to ask your question.
Yeah, mine's more of on LinkedIn, just because over the years we've kind of suffered on that. That's one thing I wanted to change this year for the club. Basically networking like I've been doing these last couple months, I should say. So my question is for all of you, when sending a like LinkedIn, so basically a connection, right, request, do you expect there should be and this was, I was talking to other people as well in the industry, do you believe that they should have a note attached to it versus just a connection? Because I feel like a lot of people just connect, right, but they don't have that added note saying like, hey, I'm big, like I did, of course, because I just do everything overhyped, it seems. But do you expect that if you want to reach out to them, like if someone's motivated, if they reach out like that, saying adding a note to it, will you be like, hey, like all you guys have done that, but I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, if a student was, after this meeting sends you a connection, but doesn't say like, I enjoyed or anything, just sent you a connection, would you like think anything of it, or like how would you go on that, I guess, if that makes sense?
I think this is another one where it depends on the person. So for me, if I don't have any connections in common with you and there's no message, I don't know who you are. And I probably would then wait until I got a message from you before accepting, which is maybe me being overcautious. But I mean, I was at the NHL for maybe 3 weeks, and someone found my LinkedIn, found out that I worked there, and sent a package to my house that they were not happy with the NHL's diversity initiative. So I'm very careful on who I accept, but I don't think, nobody views you badly if you don't put a message there. I think it just helps them know sort of why you're reaching out and what you're interested in.
Yeah, I'd piggyback off that. I think it's just personal preference, right? You're going to get some people who you're going to send a message or send a connection to, they'll accept it, and then you can ask them to connect, and maybe they'll be open to it, or they'll maybe ignore it, right? I've had that happen. I still network, and sometimes I'll send a message with the connection. Sometimes I'll just go ahead and add them and then send a message. And I think it's completely just who you're reaching out to, of them as a person, who they are, and whether they want to respond or not, whether they expect a message or not. So I think it's somewhat of tough. It's really just down to that person. So I'd piggyback off that, Melissa.
Yeah, same for me. If I don't know you well, or like after this, they'll probably get a connection from me, and it might not have a note particularly with it. But like if it's my first time, like I just want to connect with you because you are in community relations for the Cleveland Browns as well, and I want to connect with you, but we have no connection, I'll put a little note in there. But if it's somebody I work with and they're new to it, I'm like, oh, let me make sure I'm connected with Ashley on LinkedIn. So really, I think it's just preference depending on the person. So I kind of, if I personally don't know much about you, or I'm looking to get to know you, I'll put a note just so you know the reason why. Especially like for this instance, I think like it was much easier for you to say your why from the beginning. Then it's like, oh, this young man is just wanted to connect with me. Like I wouldn't take it offensively at all, but I'll just be like, oh, wonder what if he's gonna ask me something. Like it's just a question in your head. It just takes away that question mark.
Yeah, and lastly for me, like I recruit all year round usually when we're not in a hiring freeze. So whenever a student connects with me on LinkedIn, I'm like, oh, wow, they did their homework. They found out who the hiring manager is for the PGA Tour. They found me. So I usually connect, but then I'm not going to write them a message, right? I wait for them to reach out to me. And that's how I found a lot of great inside sales reps, because they applied on Teamwork Online, and then they reached out to me via LinkedIn, and that's sales. They were prospecting. They found the right decision maker, and then they ask good questions. So they already have the baseline of what you need to be a good sales rep. So.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I just thought it was a good question just because having talked to other colleges around the U.S., they've had more of a bigger LinkedIn, of course, connections, and I feel like that, of course, gives you a better, I guess, look of more, potential jobs, those connections as well. So I was just kind of curious and trying to answer those questions, some members might have because they don't have many connections on LinkedIn and are kind of, I guess, more scared to kind of expose themselves to that like professionalism, if that makes sense. That being said, does anyone else have any questions from the audience? If so, you can just raise your hand or talk.
I guess I'll go if no one else is going to go. So this is particularly for Melissa and Raven. So myself, and it looks like there's two other women here in the call. So how do you guys navigate? This is going to be kind of a harder hitting question, I guess, but how do you guys navigate being a woman in typically a male dominated field, and specifically being women of color in a male kind of space?
That is a question. I think it's just being conscious of that. So earlier in my career, when I was in more political circles, for example, I always used to straighten my hair. I wouldn't leave the house if it wasn't straight because I wasn't sure how professional I would be perceived. In working in sports now, I think I've found a sense of empowerment in my role and in my department because the head of social impact, growth, and legislative affairs is a Black woman. Much of my department is actually racially and gender diverse, more so than one would expect in hockey. But pretty much every room I go into, I'm either the only woman or the only Black person, and often the only both. And so I think I have found strength in just voicing that perspective and not qualifying it. I think the worst thing you could do is try to shrink yourself in the room. And if you call people out and say, from my experience as a woman or a woman of color, I think we're overlooking X, or have you considered X, or that's not going to be perceived well by people with experiences like mine. I think you just have to build up the courage to voice those concerns, which is not always easy. And there's going to be moments where you're sort of weighing like which battles you need to fight in order to sort of have the most impact. But I would say that, and maybe again, this could be a bias of my role, because my role is designed to increase the inclusiveness and diversity of the game. I find that people respect that and listen to what I'm trying to say. I can't speak for how that would be perceived if I were in a different role.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar situation to Melissa. We're actually a pretty diverse staff in gender and diversity, and I'm very fortunate, really. I am the only African American, but we still look at diversity. It doesn't matter if you're Black, white, you're still diverse at some aspect. But I am the only African American that's focused on the Monsters. We are up under like the Cavs, and so we have a lot of relationships there. But it is amazing to see the amount of women that I get to work with on a daily basis. Over the past year, we've talked about this so much, just with the women that started with the Monsters, and one of the elders, she was the only woman, and now she looks down on it and she's like, this is amazing just to see how it's changed from being very male dominant to women. And it's kind of funny to look at it, but we kind of stick together as much as possible. Sometimes you have to. It's not a matter of we're trying to go against the men, but it's just to make sure that your voice is heard. And to know exactly what Melissa said, what battles to fight and what battles not to fight. Sometimes it's harder to hold your tongue, or sometimes it's that moment that you need to go ahead and step up and make your voice heard. So it is a thing that we think about all the time, but it's definitely become a lot easier, I think, as time has passed, as a lot of things that has happened in the world this last couple, like 7 months, even throughout the pandemic, racial injustice, everything that has happened has really changed. Even I can see it on my team, have changed just the outlook on people's and how you talk to people and look at people. And I have a big role. I put a lot of weight on my own shoulders, and being in Cleveland, being an African American woman in hockey, I interact with a lot of young kids that look just like me, and they look at me and they're like, hockey, and I'm like, yes, come on, come to the dark side. But it's literally amazing sometimes just to be able to have that connection and kind of bridge that gap. And it's like, hey, you can be me here, and it's somebody that just looks like you. It's always a help there as well. I think we've just throughout this whole time, it's just been an amazing time to really just see the structure and the growth within people. And it wasn't that they didn't, it was just an awareness and something that you didn't go through on a daily basis. Like, it's just amazing to see at this point.
Delaney,
Thank you guys.
Delaney,
yeah,
I'm telling
go for it.
Look up, it's Women in Blazers podcast by Deanna Witter. She's the CRO of the Houston Dynamo and Dash, and she has podcasts weekly. I even tune into them just about it's anything from women in sports, the issues going on politically, going on now, racially, anything really of how they blaze into the industry, how women kind of can change and how they utilize their power, whatever. I just highly recommend it, especially just based on that question. If I don't know, I'd check it out. So I'll throw it in the chat, but I think you would enjoy it based on if you're asking that question.
Thank you guys so much. And thank you, Clay, for the recommendation. I'm kind of a podcast nerd, so thank you guys.
And Delaney, trust me, we understand. I was one of like 2 in every one of my sport management classes. Alliance probably had about like 5 athletes, like they were all the basketball players and softball players, and it was like me and like my roommate. So I understand it was a interesting time to be in the sport management, but it definitely has grown. I've seen a lot of growth within the organization within the major, and just going on from there professionally.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if anyone else has any questions. If not, I want to thank all the speakers that came tonight. I'm really honored to even have this privilege to be able to talk to so many different professionals. As the following years, we've been only really talking with the Bucks, so I wanted to get, of course, a bigger kind of look on sports. And then you never know, Melissa, Clay, Raven or Eric could be, a connection that you could easily make. Of course, they're definitely want to make that connection, but also you don't know if they could connect you with someone else where, say you want to do something in the MLB, NBA, you don't know what connections they have. And I mean, they're all just amazing people, is what I've noticed in this panel, as well as everything else. So like, just reach out to them. I mean, they're helping me keep motivated through this pandemic, and I really appreciate them taking the time.
Well, thank
All
you.
right, so I'll kind of, oh, sorry.
I would just add, if any of you have any questions beyond this that are more personal or more, based on your experiences, I'm happy to, Victor, you can feel free to share my email and people can reach out, and I'm sure others on this call would be happy to chat as well.
Same here.
All right, so with that, again, just wanted to echo what Victor said. Thank you guys for taking, the time out of your day to come and talk to us. Before we close here, I know Zach Salem, I think he's in the call here. He just wanted to say a few things and then I'll kind of wrap it up. So Zach, go for
it. Are you there, Zach? Zach Salem? I might have to text him. Let me see.
His internet connection.
He said his Wi-Fi just crashed. So we will deal with that at a later point. I will send out a email can get you guys his email so he can talk to you. But again, just wanted to echo what Victor said. Thank you guys all for taking time out of your day here to talk with us. And I think we really got some good information out of that. So again, thank you guys. And I think that just about closes it out for the rest of the night. So if anybody has any questions, you can stick around. Other than that, thank you guys and have a great night.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Have a
guys.
good semester.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
That
For
was-
anyone sticking around, sorry
got
about
Zach
that.
on
My
the call.
Wi-Fi like crashed as soon as like all the questions were going. Like everything crashed, and I was like, "Oh my god." Long story short, I'm in 421.